I wanted to ask about the two-book deal and, how you felt about that when all's said and done. Uh, just because my agent advised against it, so I didn't take a two-book deal, but I'm just curious what you thought were the pluses and minuses of that.
So yeah, that's an interesting. I'm of two minds of this, very torn. I The pluses are that I'm very excited that, especially with the state of publishing right now, and everything's up in the air. I'm very excited that I know for a fact that I'm going to have a second book, and it doesn't matter. It's not affected by how well the first book sells. So that's a relief. But the quick timeline that I had to write the second book has been so stressful that I keep wishing, like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I could just write this on my own time, and then when I feel like it's ready, then I can sell it to them. Um, it's when you have a second book on contract, I feel like you have less people telling you yes on the book. I think that's where my insecurity is that for the first book, I had to get it past an agent. I had to get it past, well, a lot of you guys read it. I had to get it, the editor and the publisher all decided that they wanted it. Where the second book, they've already agreed to take it. So in the inside, you're like, what if it's not actually good?
Yeah.
I'm actually very glad that you still worry about things like that.
I'll always worry about that.
Good. Debbie, you had a question.
Yeah, I just wondered, overall, has this process exceeded your expectations, taken you by surprise, made you really stressed? What has been your overall take?
Overall, it has. I think it's gone really well. I really like my publisher and my imprint. I've heard, so I'm in a debut group. Every year there's a private Facebook group where everybody who has a YA or middle grade novel that year can join and then ask each other questions and be moral support for each other. And I've heard some horror stories from others about their agents or publishers and various aspects of the process. And I feel really thankful that my publisher has, they've just asked my opinion on everything, every step of the process, which is not always the case. I was involved in all of the cover discussions. It's never been them telling me something. It's always been like, what are your thoughts on this? It's been more collaborative. I think what I'm surprised about is just the length of how long everything takes. And my book was like very rushed. They wanted to jump on the train of rom-coms are really in right now or in a year ago, and they didn't know how long that was going to last. So it was like, let's get this out as soon as we possibly can. So I had really tight turnarounds for a lot of my, like, here's copy edits, you have 3 days, that kind of thing. But even with that, it still takes like a year and a half for your book to come out. So a lot of people that aren't involved in our community who, friends or coworkers, when I got the deal, were like, great, when can I buy it? And you're like, oh, wait 2 years and then come back to me.
Thanks.
You're lucky you're not writing a picture book.
Oh, yeah.
The longest one of those took 9 years for me. And my sister, the same time, had a 9-year book as well. It's crazy.
I get so impatient.
I know, and the child that you think you're writing for, guess what? They don't read picture books by the time you're done. So does anybody else have a question? Chris?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could speak to the process of launching a book during sort of an unprecedented time, particularly the issues around doing like readings and Zoom type events like this one from your home.
Yeah, I feel like it's been, I was talking to maybe it was you guys, I was talking to somebody about how I feel like it's been the kind of stages of grief where at first I'm disbelieving, and then anger, and then acceptance. So I'm at the acceptance point right now. But I was just really bummed for the launch because, you know, I was going to have my family fly out to be with me, had something scheduled at Books Inc. Going to have a big party, a reading. And so to have all of that canceled and then be forced to just do things online, it feels, it just doesn't feel real yet. Like I still haven't been able to walk into a bookstore and see the book on the shelf. It's just, it kind of, you know, it was available for pre-order online beforehand. And then on launch day, suddenly it was available to order online. It would just get to you sooner. So it just didn't really feel like anything had changed, and it still doesn't really feel like that. But in terms of the online events, I've just kind of gotten used to it. And I think the positives are that I've gotten to do a bunch of events with people that I wouldn't have been able to do in person. So I ended up, for my launch, I did a Q&A with some authors who live in LA. I did an Instagram Q&A with an author in Virginia. So that's been cool to be able to kind of like use the broader community for things, but I still just really want to celebrate with everybody in person.
We'll do that. That's in the cards. Anybody else?
Could we, if you don't mind, go back before the publication from something that I read in your introduction about how you've been part of the writers group, the Unbindables, for 5 years. And so mentioning that, you know, actually the whole process of writing it and the multiple drafts. But so how long, because you decided that the quality was high enough before it went out, so how long did you work on it, your first book, before you submitted it to that agent?
So there's a few steps. So I originally, this storyline I wrote as a screenplay in college. It was very different. The two main characters had the same names, but other than that, completely different story. All the side characters were different. It was actually told from the male protagonist's point of view instead of the female. And it was a little bit like raunchier, like Superbad kind of was what I was going for. And that I was placed in a Samuel Goldwyn like writing awards for that, which I ended up got to talk to a few screenwriting agents. So there was some interest there, and then it didn't go anywhere, and so that was kind of a bummer to like almost have an agent and then not. And so then I started thinking like, oh well, maybe if I write it as a play the long con. I was like, maybe if I write it as a book, then it can be eventually turned into a screenplay, and then I can get there in the end anyway. And so I started writing it as a book, where I joined Sharin's class in, I want to say 2014, I think. But I completely rewrote it in terms of like scrapped the screenplay, totally new characters, started over. And so then that took 4 years of being in the class and rewriting things before I felt it was ready to send out.
Thanks so much, because obviously to be able to go on to your second book and have such an intense process at that point, and where you had to have so much self-belief, that I figured that you had earned it. You were ready.
It is tough to go from having all the time in the world to then having only a year to do your second one, and then to try to make it just as good.
Yeah, thank you.
So Cameron, can you so you've said 4.5 years for the first draft of the first book. How long did it take for the second book?
So I'd say it was like 3 years for the first draft of the first book, and then like a year revising. For the second book, I wrote the first draft in 4 months. So
Yeah.
while working full time and doing edits for. So that's the thing, is I had to do the edits for book one while writing the first draft for book two. So you have to kind of go back and forth in your brain of like character voice to make sure you're not mixing them up.
Any other questions?
I have one. You talked about doing the live Instagram interviews. Was that something your agent or your editor helped you kind of promote in terms of like social media for the book? Did you do anything special for that?
So I set all of those up myself, based on, I've just been really active in the YA book Twitter community, just trying to kind of like make contacts and get to know people. And so I've been friendly enough with some people over Twitter that I then ended up just direct messaging them and asking if they wanted to do events with me. So that's how I set all of those up. But then my publisher and my agency have been really good at like hyping up anything that I'm doing. So they'll retweet it or post about it on all of their channels. My publisher especially has been great at, they've given me a bunch of different marketing opportunities. I wrote a few different blog posts for them. So several ways of trying to promote all of my stuff.
Jenny, you had a question, I think, or were you trying to adjust something?
No, I'm not. No, I wasn't trying to adjust something. It was just like, I missed out on where you said you sent, or you participated in something called Pitch Word or Work Word
Wars.
Ward.
WARS, like a war.
Pitch Wars. Okay.
Yeah. So I tried to participate in Pitch Wars and I didn't get chosen for that event. It's very competitive. But that was the thing that I applied for and then didn't get in.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up becoming one of the authors who ended up picking somebody else, still sent me a long critique, and she and I have become friends now. So she was still very helpful, even though I didn't actually get into the showcase. And then I got my agent offer like 2 days after I didn't get in.
Right. I give you credit. I really give you credit for pursuing agents like that. That is such a tedious, awful thing to do. So congratulations.
Thanks. You just start getting used to rejections. Like they honestly, I mean, yeah. I guess I still would get mad about them, but I honestly would get thankful when I would get a rejection because at least it was a response. There's so many agencies where their policy is no response means no. And so then you're just like waiting forever, hoping that you're going to hear from them. So right. Even just getting rejected, you're like, great, I'm excited. I can cross them off this list.
I totally get that. Oh my God, here's packages being delivered.
Chris, you had a question.
Yeah, following up on the agents thing. So when you interviewed the prospective agents, like what was your list of questions? Like what was important to you?
I honestly can't really remember what I asked. I think it's just important to know what their ideas are editorially. Like, are there any big plot points or character things that they want me to change? And if so, am I okay with those changes? Do I think that it's going to make the book better? And then I think just knowing kind of if you want to be published with a big 5 versus a smaller publishing house, make sure that they have the right contacts for those places that you want. And I don't know, I feel like I could just tell right away on the call that we clicked personality-wise, but it could be helpful to ask like what their communication style is. Like, would you talk to them on the phone? How often do they email? Various things like that. But I don't know, I just feel like I had a vibe with her that I just knew that it would work out.